out in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday and a Friday. I'm grateful that you're here at the Pizza Ranch, and I'm glad to be with you. I wish Mary could be with us, Lee. I think you'd enjoy meeting her. She was campaigning with me last week, and she was out in New Hampshire by herself campaigning, and she can't be on all the trips, though, because we have two teenage daughters at home. One is 18, one is 15. One of them drives, and they both like boys, and so they need parental supervision. You know what I'm talking about, right? So she's got to go back and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing once in a while as well. But Lee, thanks for being here and for your introduction. And serving in the legislature is not an easy thing to do. I was a majority leader of the Minnesota legislature, and you need good people who are willing to step forward and for not much money carry the flag for our team, and in this case for Iowa, in a common sense conservative direction. Lee does that. I think he had a great session. Let's give him a round of applause for his public service. And I wish Mary were here for other reasons as well. You know, we've got one of the things about having a spouse or significant other is that you learn some things from them. They give you some good advice. You have some common experiences. But some summers ago, when we were going to the Wisconsin Riviera, the Wisconsin Dells, with our young kids, you know, the big water slides. It's a lot of fun. And we were driving back home to Minneapolis from the Wisconsin Dells, and a heat wave had rolled through the upper Midwest. It was, you know, nearly 100 degrees, kind of like it's been here the last few weeks. And of course, you know how it goes with long car rides and young kids. Anna and Mara, our two young daughters, are in the back seat of my Dodge Stratus, and Mary and I are up front. And about an hour into the car ride, of course, they're bored, so they're throwing juice boxes at each other and pulling each other's hair and elbowing each other in the ribs and the like. And pretty soon the tempers in the car are about matching the temperatures outside. So I pull it into a gas station, and I'm kind of pumping gas and grinding my teeth about these misbehaving children that I have and how awful their behavior is. And this guy's standing next to me pumping gas, and he kind of sees my family, my situation. I think he could sense there was some tension in the situation. And our eyes kind of met by the gas pump, and he goes, I wish I had two kids. I thought, oh, Pawlenty, you jerk. You know, here you have these gifts from God, these wonderful cherubs, these beautiful children. This poor sap, he doesn't have any of this. And so I turned to him, I said, well, sir, I'm sorry, you don't have kids? And he said, no, I got 5 kids. I wish I had 2 kids. It's just a little story about putting things in context, which is what I want to do with you here this afternoon. And the context of our times that we live in is we've got a country that I know that we all love. This is the United States of America, the greatest nation the world has ever known. I'm running for President of the United States because, like you, I love this country, but it's in trouble. And I've got the experience and the leadership and the record of results to lead it to a better place. Before I talk to you about what we need to do going forward, I want to just spend a few minutes talking to you about how we got in this mess and what we can learn from it. One of the reasons we got into this mess is because not too many years ago, Barack Obama came through Iowa, and he convinced the Democrats in this state to launch him on his way to the presidency of the United States. And what we now know is he gave great speeches. Boy, did he give great speeches. They were soaring, wonderful speeches, great words, got everybody, the Democrats, all excited, and they got duped into putting him on his way to the presidency. And what we now know, as we've seen what happened, is he wasn't ready for the presidency. He didn't have the executive experience. He hadn't run something. He hadn't done much. He had been a college professor. He had been a community organizer. He had been in the United States Senate long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold. And then we made him President of the United States. And we wonder why it's not working. So lesson number 1 is, in these most challenging of times, we need somebody who's ready for the job. He's got the requisite experience and background and record to be ready to be the President of the United States. Number 2, he had a vision and a plan for the country that not only was wrong, but it was dangerous. His view is we're going to have a future that is going to feature more and more government, more spending, more taxation, more regulation, bigger government, more government. And in fact, we know, and history teaches us, that never works. And now we have an economy that has got us on the country on its knees practically. There's people openly wondering about the American spirit, whether our best days are in front of us or behind us. We had a president who made all these big speeches, all these big promises, and he's broken or left unfulfilled almost all of them. I won't go through the whole list, but let me give you a few examples. You know, he said, you know, if you elect me president, I'll fix health care. Boy, do we need it. The health care system is busted. but it needs to be done the right way. But back then he was saying to Iowa, in fact he was here on the night of the Iowa caucuses, and he said he'll focus on health care reform, but he'll do it with Republicans. He'll focus on cost containment. And as a candidate, he was opposed to the individual mandate. Then he went to Washington, D.C., stiff-armed the Republicans, switched his position, became in favor of the individual mandate, and didn't focus on cost containment. He's going to make the system more expensive and worse. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we should repeal Obamacare in its entirety and start over with health care reform. Now, here's some other things he said. I'll just give you a couple more and then get on to what we need to do. He got elected president in March of 2009. He said, and this was after he knew about the full impact of the economic downturn, that as president he would cut the budget deficit in half during his first term. Now, when George Bush wound up his time as president, the deficit for the federal government was $500 billion or so. You know what it is now? Under Barack Obama's promise, it would be $250 billion if he cut it in half. But now it's $1.5 trillion for 1 year. So he didn't cut it in half, he tripled it. And the list goes on, but now with the economy being in such trouble, his big idea for the economy, remember this, was to pass this pork-filled government sustenance thing called the stimulus bill. Remember that? And he said, if you don't pass it, unemployment could go as high as 8%. Oh my goodness, unemployment didn't go to 8%, it went to 10%, and they passed the bill. So you know the rest of the story. We got to get this country back on track. Now, Barack Obama politically, I think, is over. I think we should talk about the post-Obama era, in the sense that you look at his numbers, the country has figured this out. His re-election numbers aren't very good nationally. If you look at the swing states that are actually going to decide the election, his numbers are terrible. We don't want to get overconfident or get ahead of ourselves, but if the election were held today, he'd be beaten soundly, and for good reason, in the polls. So the main way we're going to goof this up is to nominate the wrong candidate. We got to have a candidate who has the right vision for America, the right philosophy for America, the strength to do it, but importantly, to get it done. So here are my ideas, and here's my record. Number one, we got to get this economy moving again. And the answer is not a political plan or a campaign plan like he has, but an actual economic plan. I went to the University of Chicago, gave the most specific, most pro-growth, most pro-investment jobs plan of any candidate in the race, including the president. And it's all available on our website at Pawlenty.com. But to give you the Reader's Digest version, it says take those business taxes that are some of the highest in the world and make them some of the best in the world. Clean out the special deals and loopholes in the corporate tax code as an exchange for lowering the rate overall. On the individual tax code, shrink the rates from 6 down to 2 and eliminate the taxation on interest and dividends and capital gains and the estate tax. The plan goes through what we really need to do to fix spending. We call for having a new energy plan based on 3 words, more American energy. The subtitle also has 3 words, or 4 words I should say, all of the above. And that means drilling in Anwar, that means drilling offshore, that means using the energy that we have in America to reduce our dependence on foreign oil and make America's energy supply higher as a way to bring price down and more stable. We need to fix the regulatory burden in this country. As you talk to our small business owners and entrepreneurs, they're concerned about over-regulation. We need to make that load lighter, not heavier, do things to encourage businesses to start and grow in our country. And you know, secondly, we got to get the spending under control. If you're here for about an hour today, the federal government is spending $40,000 a second that they do not have. Per hour, that's $144 million in 1 hour. That's what they'll spend, money they don't have while you're at the pizza ranch this afternoon. They do that every hour, every day, every week, every month. It is out of control. Now they're running a Ponzi scheme. They're taking in $2.2 trillion or so a year in revenues, and they're spending $3.5 trillion a year in revenues. For every dollar they send out the door, they don't have 40 cents of it. Now, if you ran your family like that, or your household like that, or your business like that, you'd be done pretty quickly. But now we've allowed our federal government to do this for years and years, and President Obama has made it exponentially worse. So we've got to get this thing under control. Now look, we got some good people who want to be in Congress, but let's face it, they've mostly disappointed us when it comes to spending and getting our spending under control. I don't believe anymore that we can send people to Washington, D.C. and just trust that they're going to do the right thing when it comes to spending. I think as citizens, we got to take back our country more aggressively and put some guardrails up for them so that they got to stay on the road. I think it's really important. One of the most important things we can do for the intermediate and long term of this country is to propose and pass into law a constitutional amendment to balance the federal budget. I think that's the only way it's going to get done. Now finally, most of the candidates are going to come through town and say many of the same things on the Republican side. So one of the other candidates were here at the Pizza Ranch with you this afternoon. They'd say, hey, look, I'm for reducing government spending. I'm for reducing government taxes. I'm for school reform that focuses on parents. I'm for getting those public employee compensation systems more in line with the private sector. They'll say I'm for appointing conservative justices. They'll say that I'm pro-life and for traditional marriage and immigration reform and welfare reform and tough on security issues and the like. So you might listen to all that and say, well, what's the difference between these candidates? You know, they all sound pretty similar. They're all talking about many of the same things. Well, I hope you ask some additional questions. One of which is this. I'm tired of the talking. I'm tired of Barack Obama's speeches and having the words not actually come true. And so I think we are beyond the point in the country where we want to get duped a second time by just words. So I hope you ask the additional question of all these things that the candidates are talking about, have they done any of them? Have they actually accomplished what they're talking about? Because we don't need any more people saying what they're going to do, or what they might do, or what they hope to do, or what they talk about, or giving speeches. This country is in trouble. The hour is late. We need results. So if you go to my record, Minnesota, here's some of the things you'll see. I took spending from historic highs to historic lows. I cut taxes net during my 8 years as governor. We did school reform, including being one of the first states in the country to pay teachers and offer it statewide, not just for seniority, not just for how many years you've been around, but for performance, and student performance included. I appointed a conservative Minnesota Supreme Court. Now, for the first time in my state's history, modern history, we have a majority of justices on the Minnesota Supreme Court that are strict constructionists and conservatives. I advanced the ball significantly for the pro-life cause in my state, proposing and signing things like Women's Right to Know and the Positive Alternatives to Abortion Act. In fact, a conservative publication recently said I'm perhaps the most pro-life candidate in the race based on those results and more. I was the co-author of the Defense of Marriage Act in Minnesota, and we did welfare reform and immigration reform and public employee compensation reform before it was cool and popular to do it, and down the list. So with my candidacy, you don't have to wonder, does this person really believe these things? I've done them. You don't have to wonder whether he can do them because I did them. You don't have to wonder if I have the fortitude to stand in there and get it done under difficult circumstances, because I did all this in Minnesota. My goodness, it's a great state. I love it. It's a beautiful place. But let's face it, for a conservative, it's not the easiest place to get things done. I wasn't just rubber stamping a Republican legislature's work. And we got all those things done in one of the most difficult political environments in the country. And so this is about the future of America, and I want your help, and I'm asking for your help. We've got the Ames straw poll coming up a week from tomorrow in Ames, and I hope you'll come and cast a vote for my campaign. What you'll see is not just words, but a record of getting things done and results for Minnesota. So I hope that you'll do that. And I'll just close by telling you, we know how to do this. You know, the road forward may not be easy, but it's not complex. The founders and others gave the roadmap for what we need to do to keep this nation great. You can look back over the chapters of success that America's had and see what worked and what didn't work. And if we went around this room, you would know it even in your own story and your own experience, of course. If we started with you and went around the room, people would stand up to tell their American story. You talk about faith, you talk about family, You talk about the importance of a job in the private sector and what that's meant for being able to take care of your family, your economic opportunity. You talk about your church. You talk about maybe some help you got in a moment of challenge in your life, would be it financial or help from some others who pulled alongside. We talk about the importance of people in this room or in the community who've been entrepreneurs and business leaders. But I don't think many of you would stand up and say the government bureaucracy transformed your life in a powerful and positive way. And the point of all that is, you know the secret to this country. It isn't the bureaucracy, it isn't the federal government, it's our people. And the reason we're different than the rest of the world is because we're freer than the rest of the world. And when people are free, they can dream as they see fit, they can worship as they see fit, they can associate as they see fit, they can start things, invent things, innovate, create. They can say, I'll do that differently, I'll do it better, I'll do it faster, I'll do it cheaper. And there's a dynamic quality and a can-do spirit and a industriousness that comes with that freedom. And when government comes into our lives, sometimes so incrementally you don't even notice, and takes away one more chunk of what was reserved for families or for neighborhood or for community or for churches or charity or the private market, and they say, we'll take that over, or they weigh it down, or they say they're going to make it more expensive or slower or regulate it. They not only grow their budgets, they not only expand their footprint, but they do something else that I think is profoundly corrosive to our country. That is, they weigh down and discourage the American spirit. Now you got people all over this country discouraged, wondering about whether the future is going to be as bright as our past. You got people wondering what our national identity is in terms of our character and our spirit. And that's not the America I grew up in. It's not the America you grew up in. It's not the America we want for our future generations. We know what's wrong. We know how to fix it. We just have to have the leaders with the strength and the fortitude and the record of results to get it done. I have that. I'm running for president because I can get it done for the country, but I can't do it without you. So I hope you'll come to Ames, cast a ballot for my campaign, and send us on our way to get this country back on track along with you. Thanks for listening. I'll be happy to take your questions.